Thanks everybody for joining. This is Jeff Scott, and I have a short, not my usual weekend PowerPoint, and then we'll kick into the program. And I'll have a chance to point out what I do with the program, some of the things that I really like about the new update, specifically why I had George change the force index and how it works for me. And then I've seen some people complaining is a big word, noting that my charts look different than the charts in the add-on. So I'll work with George and make sure that I update my add-on. Let me just make a few comments about me for those who don't know me, and also about how I trade and I use the program. I have a tendency to hold positions longer than a lot of people do. And there are some years where it's a really good year to be a position trader and not a real active trader. And there are some years where that'll kill you. Just take a look since November on any major index and look at where you've been if you weren't a very active trader. This was a good year to be a swing to position trader instead of a day to swing. There are other years, and you have to get a feel of the market, of how the market's flowing, where I know I can't hold positions for any length of time. So just to give you a little bit about me. So as always, these programs for educational purposes only. I'm not telling you what to buy or sell. Anything I talk about is in the spirit of education, not investment advice. I'm a doctor, not a broker. I'm not licensed by any security authority to give trading advice, nor am I responsible for your results. You know, a lot of people think that I must work for HGSI because I do have a HGSI Doc at Gmail and a Jeffrey at HighGrowthStock.doc email address. And, you know, I'm totally independent. And I do this, and I think a lot of why Ron does it too, not that I can speak for Ron, who, by the way, I did speak with Ron today and he sounds great, which is wonderful to hear. I do this because I like to do this. I could do this as a business, I guess, and actually do ongoing education, but I got a day job, and I don't want to be charging you for something that you expect on a regular basis when I actually have to have a bunch of employees that I have to answer to as well. So I do this because I like to. I also do it and support HGSI as much as I can because I use it to make money. And the longer I keep George and Matt engaged with this and busy, the longer I'm going to have the tool. And so it's sort of a selfish reason why I do this. Everything I use, I've paid for. Trading involves risk. You and your loan are responsible. And I've really started using a lot of options in my trading. And I use them either as stock substitutes, portfolio protections, and to speculate. There is clearly risk associated with trading options, and there are some smart people at the Options Industry Council that would tell you how risky they are, and they have great education. And I suggest that you don't trade options unless you know what you're doing. To me, they're a way to accelerate income generation, but this has also been a very forgiving market. You can also accelerate income losses. Just a few words about how I trade. I met Ian back in the Telescan days, and it was sometime in the 90s. I don't think it was the late 80s because I don't think I had accumulated any cash to actually be investing. So it had to be early 90s. They were the old bulletin board company. They had data. It was a wonderful company. And I started following Ian back then. And then Ian really got me into investing. I did read, and I've read multiple times, O'Neill's books. I think Morales and Katcher have a very interesting and effective approach to improving O'Neill. And then Ian and Ron, what they've been able to do is to partner with a software vendor, George Roberts at HGSI, and improve again upon not only what Gil and Chris have done, but also Cancelin by taking it to the computer and making our lives much easier Although the worst thing that George did is he named it highgrowthstock.com, because it's a great program whether you trade ETFs, value stocks, and it's sometimes it's the name probably hurts, and I think there are probably some people that don't realize that. And then obviously Ian and Ron up here did a great job of education for us, and Ron still does it today. And those who were fortunate enough to know Ian know we lost him a while back, and what a great duo they are, and we certainly miss Ian. Down here is my friend George Lee, and I put him here because he does some educational programs. He dabbles in HGSI a bit. He's a little bit more active trader. I've learned a lot from him as well. And then speaking of learning from, this is John Person, and it's funny, Ron and I do a lot of things similar. We end up talking, I think, a lot about the same stocks. Ron has become a big fan of volume spread analysis, VSA, as a vehicle for helping him know when to go in and out of positions and to get a feel of the market. And I've been a big fan of John's for some time. He's an author. He's developed his own indicators. And so when I trade, it becomes a blend of different things. And then just, Van Tharp is the money management guru, position sizing, losses. And then if you're interested, this guy here, Guy Cohen, actually teaches options in a way that you can understand him. At least I understood him. So what I do, and I learned this from Ian, when Ian said to me one day, this is Ian speaking, not me, Jeffrey, I'm not a guru. I'll teach you to be your own guru. And I think that made a lot of sense, that I went out there and listened to as many smart people I could, found those that made sense to me, and then I took in the teachings of the folks here, Alexander Elder and others, and I turned into my own trading person. And when I educate people, which I do rarely these days because I have a company to run, I like to help teach them to be their own guru. Speaking of education, this is the only time I'm doing a live event this year. It's in Sunday, December 3rd, and it's in Palm Beach. I actually updated the chart because last time it said 48%. I actually went and calculated it's above 60 now, so I figured I'd put 60. But I like to teach people how I trade, and what I really like to do is take the things that I learned from Ian, and I still use every day, some of those funny name indicators and some of the other things that he taught us. And I like to teach them to people because I think Ian will live in the legacy of what we do. And you never get to learn from him, unfortunately, because he's gone. But boy, does he have some great ideas that I incorporate every day. And then I'll talk about how I find my favorite trades, how I manage them, how I use options to increase returns and actually reduce risk. And then I'll help you set up scans in HGSI, which you get, that's one of the great things about the community, but in TradeStation and Thinkorswim, and how to put it all together. And if you have interest, I expanded the numbers probably to 20 now, because I had a bunch of people say they're going to attend, and if I take that all for granted, I'm already above 12. But hgsidoc@gmail.com. John Person has a meeting 3 days before. If you're going to that, it's 400, if not 500. You get breakfast and lunch, and I love to spend money. So I don't do these to make money, but I'll spend a lot of money on dinner Saturday night. So most of the people who have been to my meetings know what that I mean by that. We'll go to a fancy restaurant in Palm Beach, and we'll eat and drink and have a great time, and then we'll try to get up in the morning Sunday and do the program. Everybody will go home with MP4 videos of each presentation, as well as PDFs, and I don't have a web only, because I do this to hang out with people, not to make money. Now, just in case you don't believe me when I say that I actually have a day job, and I think that's important, because one of the comments here says I'm not tied to my computer during the day, and I spend less than an hour each night while working full-time building another company. I'm sort of I hate to say I don't like when I say I'm an entrepreneur, because it sounds whatever, but I left the practice of medicine. I've had a number of startups, and this is my current startup. It's called Integra Connect, and there's my ugly mug. So I do have a real job. I use a lot of programs, and we'll talk today predominantly about HGSI. Hopefully my voice will cooperate. and a little bit about EdgeRater, and then a little bit about the trading platforms that I use. You all know the website or you wouldn't be here. I just want to point out, if you don't know us and you see this on the web, that if you go to George's site, highgrowthstock.com, it really is a free trial, and it's a free trial that doesn't even require a credit card unless he changes his mind on that. And then the other part is, if you click under investing strategies, you're going to get a real gift. And the gift is, Ron is prolific. And even more so than I. And he puts up great learning videos. He has a paid service, but he does so much as part of the community. I put up something every weekend. So I think there's some real nuggets out there that you might find, not just on how to use the program, but how to make money trading. Let me get back down here. So a little bit about my tools. And this is sort of a commercial for HGSI, but you're already using it. It's inexpensive with no exchange fees. I have every program in the market. I don't have anything now that has data that's less than 1,000, 12, 1,400 and more per year. It's computer, not cloud-based. To me, that's great because I can get on an airplane without internet access and I can do my thing. The data is managed for you, so you don't have to worry about group memberships, error correction, etc. It's a top-down trader's dream, and that's what I do, and I'll show you why. It's got a balanced indicator and tool set. What I mean by balanced is it doesn't have every indicator in McGee's book. It's got a lot of indicators. It certainly has all the common indicators, and new ones pop up when people ask to include them. It also has some proprietary indicators developed by Ron, Ian, myself, and others. It has Gil Morales' indicators, which is awesome. Some of Alexander Elder's, it's got squeeze, etc. So that's why I say balance. It's got things that nobody else has, and it's got most of what you need. I call it flicky, and I'll show you flicky when I go chart after chart. Nothing's faster than having the data on your computer. Great support staff. The user base, we teach each other. As I said, it's not just for high growth stocks. End of day data source for other programs. So I actually still have Metastock, and I can push my data out as a Metastock format and not have to pay for another data feed. And then lastly, or not lastly, it's really easy to take the data and stock list in and out of HGSI. I use EdgeRater. Why? Because it automates some of the tools that I used to do in HGSI, where I'd have to involve Excel and macros, which makes my life easier. There's some back testing, and it's kind of cool. It's like the Book of the Month Club. Every month you get a new technique. I use TradeStation. The main reason I use TradeStation are the first two, that a lot of gurus, I use it loosely, have indicators that match their style that they put out for TradeStation that you won't find in any other format because they want to charge you for them. Maybe you'll find it in Ninja. And then they have this thing called Radar Screen, which I'll probably show you, which is the reason why you should have TradeStation. And Radar Screen will give you real-time updates on the things you might want to look at. Thinkorswim, it's better because the data is free, and I call it open source, and by that I mean it's very difficult to copy protect. And since you can't copy protect the indicators, there's not a lot of guru-based indicators, but their intraday scanner is the best. It's better than TradeStation scanner. So I have both for that reason. And then seasonality, it's interesting. I like seasonality. I use it to support, but I like technicals more than seasonality. If you come to my meeting, and if you don't know these already, you'll learn the different indicators I use. And if you're new to HGSI and you send me an email and you don't mind a very dated product, I've got 5 or 6 videos that go through each button of how I use them and also go through what the indicators are. And I know George recently updated, or George or Ron, and they're on the website. Now, I mentioned before, this is the best program for top-down investing. That's why I came here. That is 100% why I came here. I used to wait for the Thursday and Friday editions of IBD coming, look at the industry group rankings, look for the weekend review that had the top stocks in the top industries, and then I'd spend my weekend looking at the charts on those stocks. And the neat thing about HGSI, it does it for me and with me. I don't have to write things down, copy and transpose. The reason why I like top down is that I think the market will drive 50% of the stock movement. You know, we've had a very strong market. Today wasn't so strong. And if you haven't made money over the last 8, 10, 11 months, almost a year from the election, then either you're opposite of what the market's doing and you're short, and you listen to too many talking heads every day that say there's going to be a correction, or something's wrong with your trading, because this market's been up, and if you've been long, you've made money. Industry groups probably influence up to 30%. So if I get 50% out of market and 30% out of industry group, only 20% is going to be my stock picking. So I spend a lot of time on my videos. I spend time on my nightly work looking at where I think the market's going to go. That market stance determines whether I'm long, short, how much margin and cash. And then I look for my favorite setups in the top industry. I do some bottoms up, and I'll show you what I mean by that. And I have different tools to gauge what's working. I put this up every weekend because every day I want to know, where are we in this market? I want to know if I am in the early stages of a bull market and I want to be uber long. Am I rolling over? I want to be protecting myself. Or am I confused and I want to raise cash and have smaller positions? And it almost seems that this year we've taken off the top of this and it's like roly-poly. And whenever you think we're rolling over, it goes higher. And which means buying VIX instruments that go up when the market goes down haven't been working for a long time, like the VXX. Shorting the market's tough when it keeps going higher. Eventually, those things are going to be right, but it's tough to be holding them and waiting and losing money, because then they start from a basis point and you're already way out of the money. This is an old slide, so I always joke at my live meetings that I did get Ian's permission to use these from time to time. I can't really get it today, but anytime it's a white slide with those things there, it's either Ian's or potentially Ian's and Ron's work, not mine. I don't take credit for it. But this is a cool story because Ian used to meet with a group of people in Palos Verdes on a monthly basis, smart people, smart as anybody on this call, and each month they used to make stock picks. Somebody would tabulate and look at the performance of the market over time. And the interesting thing is then they could go back and they could look at 20-day, which is basically 1 trading month, or 40-day, 2 trading months, and retrospectively assign the type of market that they were in. And the same people over 20 days had 100% return in a strong market and lost 32% in a weak market. It's the same people, same techniques, same way of doing things. The message to me is very loud. If the wind is at your back, you make more money, Ianism. All right, so you want to go long in a strong market. You want to be careful in a weak market. There's another teaching here, and it wasn't the primary teaching, but the more I look at this, the more it makes sense. When you buy growth stocks, they may run a lot and then they coast, or they give back some of their win. So maybe in most years, and certainly the years that this was measured, it wasn't a good thing to stay long-term in a position. So strong stocks over time in a good market gave back something over time. Look at the weak stocks. In a weak market, they just get weaker. So holding your losers when the market goes against you is probably not a way to reduce your risk and keep your nest egg. So one of the things that I just wanted to bring up first that's different in the program now is I asked George to modify, and Matt to modify, the force index. So the same force index really is still there. And the force index is from Alexander Elder. It's built into HGSI. And I've been using it for years, and I learned it from Ian and Ron, to rank industry groups or even stocks by their force. And that force is defined as volume times close today minus close yesterday. And that, it's kind of, to me, a momentum signal. And the stocks with the most momentum will come to the top of the list. And there's a bunch of trading rules that we don't really follow in HGSI necessarily, but were published by one of the fans of Elder, John Sarkett. Now, the problem with the force and the way I use it is that this thing, if you're Bank of America, is 25 million shares a day. So if I have a penny close above, up a penny on Bank of America, because of the volume, Bank of America, JP Morgan, come right to the top. That's not what I want. I want to have stocks whose volume today was so much greater than their typical volume. So I'm looking for now the increase in volume, not the absolute volume. So the force is still the same, which is that you calculate this every day, you plot it, and then we use a 2-day or a 13-day EMA. That's the classic way. Years ago, I asked George and he added a 5-day EMA, so it was a little quicker than the 13. Well, now we've got a new force, and I'll show you how I'm using that when I go into the program. And the new force, although I haven't validated exactly, I asked it to be today's volume over some average volume, whether it's 10 or 30 days, I really don't care, times the current close minus yesterday's close. So if I have a stock that went up $3 and they normally trade 300,000 shares a day, I may not look for that stock because I don't trade stocks that are low volume. But if it did 3 million shares today and was up $3, I want that stock to come to the top of my list. And this change will make that happen. So I'm going to move to the software. I already said it once. I got to say it now if you didn't hear it before. The Yahoo intraday quotes is not working since 1:15 today. So I do not have the program updated since the regular update has not come out yet. So I'm going to be working off of yesterday's data. But what I really want to do is show you how I very quickly do my top-down analysis. The bottoms up, the piece de resistance now is this top 50. I'll show you where that is. And then I'll look at the clock and decide whether I should spend any time on the last two bullets. And if you want to learn more, watch more of what I do, hang out with 20 other folks who are similarly inclined, you'll get a bunch of goodies from me besides foods. You'll get some indicators that I have in TradeStation, Thinkorswim, that allow me to scan intraday real time for the things that I look at my charts later. And we'll make sure you get everything working and that your HGSI works for you like it works for me. All right, enough commercials. There's my mouse. So one of the reasons why I did that 6-pack video that I mentioned is I know a lot of people who I've turned on to HGSI, and the first thing they did is they started the program and they got this and they turned off the program. It's the most powerful toolbar known to man, but if you don't know how to drive it, it's not very helpful. So let me just size up things here a little bit. So as you know, as you should know, these are the four to the left are kind of where you'll spend your time. And if you're like most people, you probably don't use the ranking module very much, which is probably a mistake. And I'm one of the ones that make that mistake. The designer is sort of the filing cabinet, and within that filing cabinet, you have the ability to put your own groups in and track them over time. The prices get updated on what's in the user group. The combo ranking can be, if you don't turn it off, updated what's in the user group. But the stocks that are in the users group don't change. So it gives you a chance to come back and look. Like, for example, on November 6th, 2016, it wasn't hard to see that the market was probably reversing. And so I created the boxes so I can go back and I can start to look at the performance by the various boxes from that date. Well, from time to time, I'll get the idea to do that again. I did it, must not be on this machine. I did it a couple months ago. And why do I do this? You have to have been to Ian's meetings or come to mine, or Ron will talk about it. It's just a way of finding the stocks that are really working well, and HGSI will build them for you. So I'll try and remember to do that for you. So the user groups are yours. Now, Ron supplies the Woodward and Brown groups, and if you've been on my webinars, you know I spend all day long in those groups. And these are all the major indexes, ETFs, sector ETFs, and I use this to do a lot of my top-down review. The reference groups are exactly that. You can look at by index component. These are the stocks in the transportation index, oil and gas index. So you could scan or look for stocks based upon being part of various groups. Maybe you're an ETF fan and you're interested in, what is in the Energy Select Spider. So you can actually, and this, again, this is one of these great things that is done for you in the program, is that the membership in these groups are maintained. So I use this a lot when I build my watch list, because this is where the stocks live, or indexes, etc. What you all used to are the smart groups, and these are scans that were designed by the named people here. Ian and Ron, the most of them, Ghilardi, myself, Steckler, and these scans will update every night, and they used to during the day. Can I fill the screen? Okay. They used to update during the day when the Yahoo worked, but as of 1:15, that's not happening. But hopefully that'll be fixed. But every night when you update at 7:30 tonight Eastern time, these will change. And all you got to do is start to look at these and find some of the best stocks on a given day, or if it's a downside reversal, some of the worst stocks. So these have been wonderful. Now, if you watch my videos or you spent any time with Ron, you'll know that for years, I've been going to Tools, Group Inclusion Report, and I've been taking the hypothesis that says, if some of these groups are the best stocks, if a stock shows up in a lot of groups, then maybe I need to look at that stock. So it's built into HGSI historically, where I could load my selection, and you have to know where these things hide. So you can always pause this if it doesn't work for you, and go to the right place and point at the Woodward and Brown group selectors. But if I hit this group GIR, and I modified it a little bit from what was in the package, it identifies 199 groups that are bullish. Well, it's not really 199, because 170 of them are the index groups. This is the old way of doing it, but I want to lead to why this new feature is so great. So I would run this every night. I'd make a group from the report. We'll just call this 11-1. It's not really, I'll make it 1031 because it didn't update yet. And I'm interested in the top 15, and I'm going to save it to a file. I'm going to hit OK, and like magic, it's going to create, put this where I remember where to kill it, top 15, 10.31. And I'm going to hit save, and like magic, it's going to open up a HTML page, so probably Chrome. I don't know what I've set up, no index, so I guess I'll open it up in Internet Explorer. And these are the stocks that last night would have come up to the top. Now, it turns out there was a reversal in semiconductors today, which was probably overdue, and probably concerned about Apple earnings tomorrow. But you'll notice that last night, universal display was in 14 of those groups. And it was in the groups that I like: consistent earnings, 52-week highs, demand, high ERG growth, high profit, code blue, and force index. So a lot of the groups that I prefer, it showed up in. And these are the stocks that I want to fish in. So if I didn't have a lot of time, I would come into my computer, I'd say bull or bear, and then I'd go look at my group inclusion report. And oh, by the way, if I said bear, I could have gone tools, and we're going to have George built in this because we only have the bullish one. I could have done the same thing, clear it, load selection, and pick short side. And I can do the same thing. It's 187, make group, we'll call losers. Now, if you've done this a few times, especially if you know how to spell, you can fly through this. It doesn't take that long to do it. However, George made your life easier. So if I wanted to see the stocks that were out of favor in the market because I might want to be short, this is going to bring up some of the weakest stocks. Now, part of the problem with buying the weakest stocks is they're already beat up, so it might be too late to short them. But I could certainly look at this and see groups that I don't want to be in: toys and games, publishing, and you can get an idea of where some of the weakness has been in the market. So what's new, and perhaps the most important new thing for most users, is not going to be Jeffrey's issue with force index, is we now have something called HGSI custom groups. So if you click on the plus, you're going to see top 50 and option volume. So option volume is going to give you a list of stocks that have the most active options. Now, I use that list sometimes to go fishing from because, as I said in the beginning, I like buying stocks with options or using options instead of buying stocks. So fishing in a pond of active options is important. If you've ever looked at the spread versus the price on a low price stock, you know if it's illiquid, you get screwed when you do your transactions and you pay too much of a spread. Options are even worse. So if you trade options, it's nice to live where the volume is, so you could get out with a penny or two instead of a 50 cent spread on every trade. So more importantly, the HGSI top 50 now will pop up the last list that's been done. And as I mentioned, the update's not out to 7:30 or 7:20, but this 50 stocks here were the best stocks in the market last night using this group inclusion filter. So not only does it do it for you every night, you can go back and look for each day. And I haven't done it yet, but I think Matt or George did demonstrate it the other day. I could actually do a group inclusion report and say which 15, 30 stocks hit the month of October the most top 50s. Because again, maybe I'm going to identify some of the big winners in the market. So good, somebody just said they get it now. The reason why you like the top 50 is all that clicking and GIR stuff that I do. You don't have to do it anymore. Now, a shortcut that I'm sure everybody knows is if I highlight HGSI top 50 and I hit warehouse, and because I had to change my resolution, and for those who are thinking, man, it's so small, what is he doing to me? You should have seen what it's like before, because it's a 4K notebook and I turn it down to 1920 by 1080. So if I go into this one, hit it, the stocks now, and I think the new font, I think Ron made a comment too, the new font is so much easier to read. So I can just bring them right over into the warehouse view. And now if I have my favorite view, and I'll talk about a couple of those in a few seconds, I can rank them from that view and perhaps not have to look at all 50. But I like looking at all 50. I want to go back to the designer for a second. And I saw a lot of comments, this only happened for a week and then no one's going to ask anymore. My smart groups are gone. Well, you just have to go up, I think it was into File, Manage Group Subscriptions, and then you can check off which of these you want. Now, I don't use Larry Connor stuff. I wasn't smart enough to figure out Charles Kilpatrick stuff, and it's been a long time since I've been an HGSI starter. So I knocked those out. That might save an itty-bitty bit of my SSD space, and it might save a microsecond of the analysis time, but I'm not going to use it, so I left it out. So unless you check these, they won't be downloaded and they won't show up here. And again, every night when you download them, they will be updated for that day. In the past, and hopefully when we get the intraday quotes working again, which is not an HGSI issue, it's a Yahoo issue, you'll get to do that intraday because, and I hope it's not a tease because you can't do it until it gets sorted out. But if I was to do a full update at clicking this at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I would get the price where they were at 145, the group indexes, everything would be recalculated, and I could start looking at what stocks are winning and maybe make some decisions before the market was to close. So, but we have to get the real-time quotes working again. I'm looking for questions. So far, it looks okay. There was a comment that I agree that there are some HGSI, there are some YouTube videos of Ian out there. It wasn't just that he's a super nice guy. It wasn't just because he had a cool English accent. It wasn't just because he was brilliant. His delivery was the best delivery I ever saw. And it's funny, and I don't want to waste your time, but a lot of the things that I learned from Ian about life, about having a three-road scenario, you need to be prepared. Is the market going up? Is it staying the same or is it dropping? Work in business too. So a lot of the things I learned from him, I actually took into my business life. So I showed you right now the top 50. In a few minutes, I'm going to show you how that force thing has affected me. The other thing I wanted to show you was, remember we just made those winners and loser, whatever they were called, groups, web losers, web winners. They're sitting right here in your user group, so you could actually flip through these very quickly without having to transpose, copy, or anything else like that. But since I've got the top 50, why would I do anything but that? Now, each of us have our favorite views, so let me comment on a couple of the views. The T1, and these are ancient, whether Ron did them or Ian did, I can't tell you, but if they have a number in a letter, it came from Woodward and Brown. This is my favorite view if I'm looking at an index group. And the reason why I like it if I'm looking at indexes, let me go down to the user groups full, is because if I go to the combo here, well, actually, let me take a step back. A view consists of a filter and a ranker. So the filter defines what is available to be ranked, and then the ranker brings whatever reason up to the top or bottom that you ask for. And as you can see, there's a comment that's can be used in any index, group, market, or stocks, top to bottom by percent price movement based on 1 in 5 days, increasing accumulation, increasing force index, which considers price and volume. And those that don't have volume are ranked by price only. So a lot of indexes don't have volume, So I use this every night, and I always start here on my top-down review with this view because it allows me, if the combo is sorting, to say that at close of the market yesterday, which was different than today, is I know that as of last night, the NASDAQ was one of the, in the mid caps were leading. I could look at price change for 1 day. I can look at 5-day price change, and I can get a sense of what's leading. But by using the combo, now let me go over here. The combo here has heaviest weight is 1-day price change, half as much for 5-day. So this is really a short-term what's moving right now. You have to know what goes in that view to know when to use it. I could go into the top 50 and use that view. And you know, if I look at what's moving now as of last night, I know this company well, and this company had a huge move up. So it was what was moving now, except no one likes this sign. Whether it's a gravestone doji, shooting star almost, opened up here, traded up, and then closed back near where, closer to where it opened. Not exactly a bullish candlestick. And if the intraday quotes were working, I could hit F5 and it would paint where the current price is, but they're not working right now, unfortunately. We know Facebook widely held, and since it's a big part of my portfolio, and I had some puts on it, but probably not going to matter. Facebook's down $2 after earnings. Y'all probably know what happened to Amazon last week, and if you listen to my webinars, you probably know what my #1 holding is. Amazon went up like 130, which was bizarre. So I could go through, and you know, I said fast. All right, let me show you how other programs. All right, I'm flipping, and I have a ton of indicators on here, and I've turned down my video speed. If I go into TradeStation, oops, and I'm only going here for 1 second to make a point. And I want to look at my charts. If I hit, all right, going to work for me. First of all, it's got to be working. But if I want to go to AMAT, I'm waiting. And then I want to go to Con. By the way, it's had a great move from the trash heap to being investable. It takes time because it's got, that's not even Con, because this is a beta version. This is why you don't use beta versions of software. It's got problems, but it takes time to write. In a program where the data sits on your computer, it's much faster. And if you don't have all my indicators on it, it's even faster as well. So I start my analysis every day by going, as I said, to Ron Brown's Major Markets Plus. I bring it over into my warehouse. I take a top-down view, and I want to come out of the next 3 to 4 minutes with an understanding of, is this market going up or going down? Is the market, what's leading the market? What is the dollar doing? Because I know that gold and silver go the opposite way of the dollar, and maybe what is oil doing and the VIX. So very quickly, and again, I apologize, that's last night's data. I would pull up a chart, and you notice that word view is here again. I don't use this view to look at indexes. We have a lot of different views that you can use, and I use a simple view. I use a 8-day exponential, 1750 and 200, simple moving averages. I'm not even going to get into the indicators tonight. And I looked at this, and if this was last night, what I should have seen and I saw was sort of an inside bar with a doji, so that's a hesitation, and you know, we're sort of topping. To me, that tells me we might be getting closer to a top. or a short-term top. And you might be able to just go back and look at what happens in the past when you get a doji. What does that usually mean? So that was concerning. So maybe today wasn't a shocker. If I look at the NASDAQ, NASDAQ was on fire yesterday. If I look at the Dow, again, a doji starting to pull back a little bit, okay? And if I look at the Russell 2000, clearly going sideways to pulling back. So I would have looked at this and said, wow, the NASDAQ is strong. The rest of the markets are kind of treading water, and I see some things that might concern me as with some of those dojis at these highs. Then I would go to the dollar, and I would see that the dollar has pulled back a bit. What are these lines? These lines are lines that I put in because the way that the program is set up, clear those because I don't need them right now. If I open up the tools, and I'm just going to make a line, call it red, and say, all right, I'm curious, how much did the market move between those two bars? And it tells me it went up $1.10, which is 4.6% in 35 days. So I have a lot of, I'm often measuring that. So the dollar's pulled back a little bit. The VIX, as of yesterday, really isn't doing anything. All right, it's enough of the VIX. And then do I want to be buying gold and silver on the dollar pulling back? Not me. I think it's still in a downtrend. And what about buying silver? Until something changes? No. So in that quick spin, I know that the NASDAQ is leading the market. I know that there's some things that show me that maybe the market's slowing down. The dollar is not strong, and the metals don't look so great, but the VIX is quite low, which is something that's supportive of a good market. So I still could feel bullish with a not super bull, a little bit of concern. All right. Now, since I'm a top-down guy, and I said in my PowerPoint that the market determines 50%, I'm starting to feel kind of like we're here based upon those dojis, but I don't know that for sure yet. What else might I want to do? Let's take a look at what industry groups are working. So I'm going to hit 07, also in the Woodward and Brown groups, and there's 174 industry groups. And I'm going to hit the warehouse view, and the first thing I'm going to do is say I don't use this view for industry groups. It probably works and would show you what's moving today based upon one-day price, but this is where I pull in my force index. And for quite some time, I've been using force up and force down to momentum rank the market to find the industry groups that are moving the most. So whether I go force 2-day up, which had 58 securities, or I go force 2-day down that had, that's not yet, too soon, that had only 3, well, that tells me on a very short-term momentum that the market is up, but it's a 2-day force. I might look at the 5-day force, and I see that over the 5-day period, 47 groups have positive force, while on the 5-day down, hope I didn't kill it. See, well, 37 had it to the downside. You're going to get the same number, but I'm going to talk about the scaled force in a second. And then as a top-down investor, just bring up my PowerPoint so I remember. First, I want the market. Then I want to look at the industry group. And then I want to find the top stock in the industry group. And I don't know any product, Telescan, TCNet, VectorVest, web-based products. Nobody does it as well as HGSI does it. So typically I would go to the 2-day force up, I would right click, change to index group, and I will get a list of stocks that are from top to bottom that are performing well. I always get nervous when the index is outperforming the stocks. And maybe it's got some flaw related to trying to update it. But now I have the stocks that came to the top, and as they should be, based upon my view, they're ranked by 2-day force. So these should have a lot of movement over the last 2 days. Now, normally I would bring one of my web views down, but I don't want to go crazy on indicators today and scare you. I'm just going to leave simple moving averages up. I'm always the same. 17, 50, and 200, green, blue, and red, simple moving averages. And then I use an 8-day exponential, and we should be seeing movement over the last couple of days. So here is Pioneer Natural Resources, pull back to the 50, has moved up on volume. I'm not saying to buy these, I'm saying that I'm looked for stocks in this group that have group momentum. Now, I would rather have this one first than that one. And so I'm trying to play around with different ideas, and that's why I played around with my modified force, which we're going to look at. So typically I would go through these. Now there was a question, and since I have no legal relationship with HGSI, I will answer it. They're very similar looking to Investors Business Daily, but they're not IBD indexes. There once was a time when George actually was probably the only person on the planet that was licensed to use his index, William O'Neill's IBD indexes, but these come from another vendor, but they are similar. Here's another one. So again, I've identified stocks in a top industry group that are moving. That was the goal. If I right click and hit back, I can now hit semiconductors and right click on semiconductors and start looking at these groups. Now, the first two stocks had 1 and 5 million of volume. Look at the average volume of Micron. Now, on this, that had huge volume yesterday. Huge volume yesterday. 61 million shares were traded yesterday. But that's only twice normal volume. I'd rather give this credit for being twice, not for being 61 million shares. And that's why I played around with the force. Here's Intel, Nvidia. Only point I'm making here with what I'm showing you is I don't know any other tool and that will such a great job will bring up the different, rank the industry groups based upon your specs and then allow you to drill down. Now, 58 groups made this. Let's look at what happens when I put my scaled. It's switched, all right? It's now ranked by 2-day EMA scaled. So what we should find, and this is probably not a good one to start with, but it's the one that came to the top, is I should find stocks and groups that have had a substantial volume increase. So Shutterstock, I would never scan for this. It's only got 284,000 average volume shares. It had 2.6 million shares traded. So it had 10 times normal volume. I want to know that that stock exists because I've learned over the years that these stocks will do nothing, have no volume, and then sometimes the volume comes in before you get the big move, and then the stock takes off to the races. So for me, this made a lot more sense. Only one was above the index, so I'll go to the next one. Infrastructure and construction, SBA Communications. That's a beautiful chart. You know, I could almost argue it's not really a cup and a handle. Maybe it's inverse head and shoulders. Who knows what this is? I'm not going to spend the time and go into it. Normal volume is 1.8 million shares, so it's doubled its volume. All right, so that's meaningful to me. Sterling Construction, normal volume is 498 shares, 1.5 million. So what I'm finding here are not only stocks who had a big price increase, but they had to have a substantial volume increase. And to me, price with volume means a whole lot to me than price alone. Now, I'm still experimenting with this, to be honest with you. And so I won't give it to George to put out for a week. But I like what I see. Home Builders Index. I have no idea. Oh, I know who they are. They got bought. That's why they're up at the top. So one of the challenges with any analysis is that when something gets acquired, they get huge volume and a huge price move, and it'll skew everything. So this is, I don't know if they're merging with Lennar, Pulte, or Toll Brothers, but one of those are merging with them. William Lyon Homes, not the primary home builder that you would think of. Normal volume is 417 million shares, and it traded 1.35, so 3 times normal volume with a big price move. I scan in a number of programs looking for stocks that are having a big price move on volume. So there was a question on my chart, why do I use an 8-day EMA versus an SMA? Well, Terry, I have an advantage, and so do you, over the people that are in this slide. Ron's actually more like us, a smart one of us. This guy here, John Person's a great guy. He's got a brand. He's not going to vary and use somebody else's stuff. I'm a hodgepodge guy. So there's a guy named Steve Bigelow. And Steve Bigelow, who I used to follow and learn candlesticks from, used to call it the T-line, the 8-day exponential moving average. And he found, as you could see here, as you could see here, that strong stocks would run up above the T-line, and that he would take the trades when they broke above the T-line. He would search for stocks breaking above the T-line. And to me, that's part of what I look at, but it's only a part. So I use it because I believe in it. I know people might use it as a stop loss as well. If I closed below the T-line and did not trade above the T-line the next day at the open, I would use it as a stop. There's a question about using the pie charts. Pie charts are great. I didn't want to confuse people, and that's why I haven't done them, but that's another tool. Now, I know somebody's already thinking of bailing because, my God, this is so hard. No, it's not. It's not, because here's all you got to do. You have to come home from work. If you're retired, wait till the updates. Unless the intraday update works tomorrow, it's still not working, I bet. I'm just wishful thinking. I think Yahoo's changing our life. Just look and see a chart and see if it says the first. It does. No, it's not working. You're going to come home from work. If you're the one that doesn't want to work too hard, I get it. I have those nights. We got 15,000 employees, and each one of them has an issue. I'm going to come home on those nights. I am going to hit my designer. I am going to go up to the smart groups, actually the custom groups, I'm sorry. I'm going to open up that HGSI top 50. I'm going to look at the last one I have. I'm going to hit the warehouse, and I'm going to go down. Maybe I'm going to sort it by force. I want the things that have price and volume moves. I'm going to make sure it's ranked by combo, and I'm going to open up, and I'm going to 6 to 6:30, and I'm just going to scan through these, and see if any of these look interesting. And I'm going to go through one after another. How hard is that to find things that look interesting? Now, anybody own Win? Lousy day in the market today. Win had 2 big up days in a row. you could have run this last night, saw this, and potentially got in at the open on win today. Uptrend pullback to the 50, and then on yesterday it had 4 million shares versus 1.7. So I like that price and volume. So you can make this as simple or as difficult as you want. You notice I said several times I talked about volume. Well, if you look under my mug here, you'll see that I've had this in here for years because I'm a big believer in volume driving price higher, and that I like to scan on a daily basis to see stocks that had 3x volume. So I could do that, and I could put my combo rank on. So Trex comes to the top. And I may think that's gone too far and pass. Also notice that right here, earnings due date, they're only as good as the data that we get or that George gets, but you don't want to necessarily be buying things the day before earnings, or you want to know their earnings are coming. So I might go through real quick. Do I see anything that's buyable? So far, no. And why do I say buyable? Because I don't want something that's gone so far that it's too late to buy. But I'll look at the volume stocks, and every one, this one I'd be interested in going to look more. It's moved a lot, but I love the pattern pullback and a breakout on gigantic volume, so I might look at that one. This one's too cheap. So I always like to run that, and we all have our own trading style. Now, those that know me know that I have a very simple trading style. And my trading style is to buy pullbacks in an uptrend. So it's sitting right there. Hit the warehouse view, put my force on it, and I can start running through this. Now let me tell you a little secret. I'm not sure force is the right thing. If I'm looking at a bunch of industry groups, I use force. If I'm going to look at stocks and I want a balanced fundamental and technical, I'm going to use this one. And this one has a $4 and 250,000 filter on it. So the 51 became 27. And the scorecard locates top stocks to trade based upon both technical and fundamental factors, strong earnings, revenue growth, strong relative strength, group rank accumulation, ROE, etc. That's what I want to be buying. So I've identified the technical pattern, pullback in an uptrend. The Kahuna is a momentum indicator. I don't want a stock that's going sideways for 7 years. I've put it in this group so I can open up, and let's see if these stocks were pullbacks in an uptrend. And let's make this bigger. Let's get a little bit more data. Yeah, it's sort of an uptrend pullback, not that exciting. And since I want to look for momentum indicators, I'm not going to teach these indicators. Today I'm just going to tell you green and blue are good and red is bad. I don't get that excited about this one. Next one. A lot of takeouts will be in here. Performance Food Group. Don't know anything about it. Kind of been sideways for a long time. It had a couple kahunas. Interesting. See if I can find anything that's perfect. I remember I did a live presentation one day and Nugget showed up, and the next day it popped. We may not see one today because the market's so extended, I might not seeing pullbacks. So the reason we have these are to find specific patterns, and you don't always find them. All right. But that's how long it took me to look through. I have another scan that I like, which requires the stocks to be squeezing. So that means they're not way extended. And it requires it to be close to a PSAR reversal, which is another, to me, it's a pre-breakout scan. So let's run up here. Let's just see if any of these look interesting. And I like scanning the market, bringing leaders to the top, and seeing if any of them make sense. So this yellow here says it's squeezing. These red dots and green dots are Wilder's parabolic SAR. And I know that when it breaks above, it often signals a change in direction. It's also a trading signal that followers of Wells Wilder may want to jump onto. So why not scan for stocks that are setting up? You know, this is a stock that if you look at it on a weekly, this was a big winner, and now it's sort of got quiet. So here's a weekly uptrend pullback to major moving averages, and maybe it's getting ready to run. And on my daily chart, it's in a squeeze. It had a mobile breakout today or yesterday. It had a pocket pivot, and it's right below the PSAR dot. It's one of my favorite setups, and at my live meetings, I teach people how to trade it. Here's one, and you know, as I said, Ron uses a lot of the volume spread analysis, and I'm trying to learn that. I'm not smart enough, but it's got a bunch of green VSA signals. Now, this is probably going to get too dirty, too much stuff going on, but here's an uptrend, sideways, right below the PSAR, a pocket pivot, a kahuna out of a squeeze. InvestNet looked interesting. And I'll go through to see if I find stocks. That's why I scan. So I don't know any company that does this for me, and I don't know any product that can replace this. There are shortcomings, and the shortcoming is what we're seeing tonight, which is it doesn't have a built-in real-time data source. I'm sure we can all get one, but then we'll have to pay probably $500 a month, a year more for the data and then exchange fees. And I don't think I want to be doing that. So I will supplement this by using other tools. One of the tools I'll use is Thinkorswim. And in Thinkorswim, and you know, these are freely shared among the HGSI folks, we could probably find a scan that would be some of the criteria I like. So this is a scan that's looking at a person buy signal, which is something that's in Thinkorswim, but I'd love to get into HGSI, with MACD divergence. I'm scanning all stocks. And so I could do this scan anytime, day or night, even if the market's open, and it might help me identify stocks that I want to trade. This scanner treats the last or the current bar as a completed bar, which allows the scan to be thinking it's the end of day. In TradeStation, the tool that I like to use, and that's why I have both of them, and again, this is a beta version, so bear with me, it is a thing called Radar Screen. And what I've done in Radar Screen, let's see if I leave it right correctly, is I've built a watch list. Let me get into this one. And I include, well, now it all popped up. Open this up here. It includes a lot of the same things that we've been talking about. Bible gap ups, pocket pivots, mobile breakouts, squeezes, red candle high, green candle low, when are earnings coming, and then other stuff that I use. And during the day, I look for dots. So if I want to know at 10 o'clock, has anybody had a Bible gap up? All I got to do is click on Bible gap ups, and I would know very early Facebook, Juno, Win, and US Steel had Bible gap ups today. And it happens immediately because the gap up occurs right away. And then once you get the gap up, you have to wait till you get the right volume signature. I know pocket pivots during the day. I don't have to wait to end of the day. And some of the other indicators I like. And then the other thing that's nice in TradeStation, which is also in HGSI, so I want to know what's got earnings tomorrow. Facebook had them today. Juno had them today. Both of them were good. Light's earnings sucked, but they, in the beginning of the day, they did fine. And then tomorrow, big day, Apple, Court, which is a biotech stock that I've been playing, and Chemet, which I think that's what it's called, which is a semiconductor. So I know which stocks that I play have earnings tomorrow, and that may affect what I do. If I own them, do I sell them? If I don't own them, do I want to play? So that's kind of what I do. I spend the vast majority of my time in HGSI And then when I do my major analysis over the weekend, this is another thing that I think is awesome. I'm able in HGSI to create my own user group. I'm able to bring in groups. I'm able to combine them in consolidated buys. I can export them into other programs as a CSV, comma separated list or a text column. I can make a HTML file, so I could take this and I could save it as an HTML, and I'm just going to put it on my desktop. And then I could open up Excel, which I probably shouldn't be doing. It's going to take a few minutes, but I can actually import that file into Excel. And if I actually knew how to use Excel, and I'm being somewhat facetious, I would know that I could also have a real-time data connect. And if I was to lose my real-time or near real-time updates in HGSI, I could download this to Excel and get the updates that way. And I have it built in actually with Thomson Reuters. So I was able to pull that, and now I can do sorting and all kinds of things in Excel as well, or storage and keep things. So on that note, I think I've covered the things that I wanted to cover. I've answered most of the questions. For those who've never heard me talk before that haven't tuned out yet, if you go to the HGSI site, you will see under investing strategies, you'll see my name, and it's a video blog, and I'm pretty religious. I'll tell you that I'm not doing it because I got something going on in my life, and then I'll do it anyways. That I will be putting up videos which are typically an hour to an hour 10 minutes long that talk about what I think about the market and what I'm doing. And as you could see, well, you can't see, but there's hundreds of them. And as I pointed out, where I go as well is on Ron. And Ron, oops, that's his, which, by the way, I do that too. But here's Ron's reports. So one of the reasons why you would want to go to the investing is to make it so he has to keep doing this a long time, because those of us that are part of his insider club, every couple of days, if not daily, we get something from Ron. And as you could see, it's not a big ask. On that note, I'll answer any questions and then probably jump to have dinner with my wife. And I suspect that this will be recorded. Yes, George.
This is George.
Yes.
If you'd go back to the custom groups and the OCC stuff.
OCC.
Yeah. Option volume.
Oh, okay. I didn't know what you were talking about when you said OCC.
Pick one of those. Okay.
Yes.
Now, up there on the toolbar, the reports, just click that reports. Now, down. That one. Yeah. There's a report button. Nope. Move to the left.
So on this.
Go up. Now, right underneath there, there's another little button. That one. Yeah.
Oh, look at that.
Thought you might like to see how that gets all laid out there for you in a nice report with the volume.
So if you like trading options, you like to see things that have lots of volume. And so this really lays out those options, because when you get to things that have 10 contracts out and you own them and you're trying to sell them, good luck, because they got you and they know they got you, which means you're going to, the option may have an intrinsic value, meaning it's worth $3. It's a $10 option. The stock is 13. And if you need your money right away, you'd be lucky to get $2.25. And that's what happens with an illiquid option. If you trade an option on Apple or Spiders or the Qs, it's probably a 3 cents. That's going to hit you.
That same report button also works for the top 50.
Ah, so you get the same thing that I built on my own.
Right.
Very nice. All right. I don't see anything new popped up on questions, so I guess I'm going to go find my wife and go have some dinner.
Hey, thanks a lot, Jeffrey.
Thanks for my new force index. I like it.
Okay, you're welcome.
All right, thanks,
Thank you,
everybody.
everyone.